has happened in food in America, an evolution that began, in many ways from someone coming to America and telling us, actually, there's more to coffee than the brown water in your diner cup. But also has crossed an amazing threshold, when you go to a farmer's market anywhere in this country, or you go to a food truck in any town in this country, there's been a tremendous evolution of interest and excitement and enthusiasm and education in food in America. And it's an evolution. It isn't, one of the challenges when you think about building an American pavilion and you want to show how food has changed is you also cannot not serve hamburgers, because everyone's coming for a hamburger at the American Pavilion, and I had one for lunch 2 days ago. So we have to tell a story that is on many levels, what people expect, what people don't expect, and what the future might hold. And that's what the 2.0 means. It also obviously refers to the role that technology will play. And to me, you can think about the technology we know now, but we can't think of the technology we don't know. And one of the joys of this project has been going into research institutions, has been going into Silicon Valley, has been looking at all of the ways that technology will impact the way we eat. And ways we might not want it to, or decisions that we have to make about how it will, but certainly technology will be there. Coffee is a prime example. You might believe that the espresso machine was born with the Italian Republic, but actually it's a technology that allowed a different type of consumption that had a cultural impact. Some even say coffee was the root of democracy, let's say, in Europe. And so all of these sorts of things have to play into this concept. The other thing that I think is true about American Food 2.0 is it means that there's a 3.0 coming. And the fact that there's a 3.0 coming is really underscores the point that food constantly changes, and the decisions we make today impact our future, and we have a responsibility to make those decisions account, to be mindful of them and the impact that our decisions today have. So I don't know what 3.0 is, I don't really know what 2.0 is, but I do think we want everyone to leave the pavilion knowing that they have a role to play in figuring that out. The pavilion itself was designed by Jim Beaver. This is the most current rendering, and actually you'll see it does look quite like this. Some things to note: it's very open. In fact, it doesn't close to the elements. It doesn't even necessarily close to regulate people coming in. It's intended to be a place where people come and hang out and learn. That was a very conscious decision. We're often building fortresses these days for all sorts of reasons we are fully aware, but the expo itself is intended to be this sort of global meeting place, and we wanted the American Pavilion to be welcoming in that way. There's a 100-meter growing farm. If you took a football field of plants and you turned it on its side, you would have our vertical farm. Here too, the idea is not that all of farming in the future will be on the sides of buildings. That's a ridiculous idea. But it's an idea that technology can allow us to do things we might have not imagined, and also that technology and what's growing there actually are heirloom seeds mostly, so we're not growing futuristic food on the side of the wall, but it allows us to show people, to actually bring people right up close with growing, with agriculture, with the history of agriculture in America in a very real way, and also in a beautiful, dramatic way. You walk up a boardwalk, and we'll get into a little bit of detail. That boardwalk is repurposed wood from Coney Island, from post-Sandy. The point there being that nothing goes away, let's say, that we have to figure out how to use all these things, and also to resonate with New York City, which is, in some ways, because of Dorothy and R's institution, being based here for so long, are part of the fabric of this whole exhibit. But it is representative of what is going on in America in general. And then there are lots of fun things that we'll see about the building. Just to show, this is already 6 weeks old. It's much more developed than this, 85% done at this point. But it really has come to life in a very substantial and real way. From the back of the pavilion, that boardwalk goes all the way through. You come to a grove of oak trees, our national tree, which is actually where you would be waiting to enter to the timed exhibits downstairs. We'll learn a little bit more about that. Another thing about this relationship between nature and technology, all of the guts of the building are in that right-hand side you see. On the left-hand side is that growing wall. And what happens in the middle is this negotiation between technology and nature that we all are part of every day when we eat. Our roof we expect to be a really hot spot, let's say. It is a gorgeous view of the Alps on one side and of the entire expo on the other, and we know that that's going to be the party spot of expo. And we intend to both program it with educational talks and exhibits and things that rotate, but also just to use it for fun. Speaking of exhibits, we have Molly McBride here from Think. If anyone needs, Molly's the media producer. If anyone needs any more information, we're done. But the exhibits are intended to talk about these two main food points. The one being the role and the American perspectives that we bring to the question of global food security, how we'll feed the future. That's on the boardwalk level. And downstairs, the fun part, the culture, the cuisine, the fabric of American life that is told through food. people are encouraged to come in, and you walk up the boardwalk into the main exhibits, the food security exhibits, and then with a ticket you go downstairs and move through the lower Great American Foodscape, almost like a ride, although you're walking. And we remember that this is a World's Fair. So when you enter, you come up that ramp, you hear the Mohawk Thanksgiving address told in this beautiful, rich, enveloping soundscape and different multi-generational voices that brings you to this first thing, 1 in 9 billion. And I'm just going to harp on this a little bit because this is that idea that each of us will be one of those 9 billion people. So the future of food really is about food today. What we decide to eat or drink or how we decide to live today is really what we're talking about. We're talking about what the future of food is. And so we want to remind people, and the last person to remind people that all of us is 1 in 9 billion will be President Obama. As you walk through this space, we've divided the concept of food security, let's say, into different communities of knowledge, and those communities are built around farming, industry, cooking, not so much cooking as in the importance of what we do in the kitchen, but what we do outside the kitchen, what we can learn from cooking, the new role that chefs have, nutrition, policy, and research. Obviously, there are other ways we could have divided these up, but what happens to you in this experience is you see all of the different interconnected elements that lead us to a secure future. That's wholesome food, that's fair access to food, that's food that is accessible, obviously, but also delicious and part of the culture. You know, we can all sit in a room and come together and think about what food ought to be, but if people don't actually eat it, or if it isn't part of the history or the tradition, the same way that coffee is not just about what's in your cup, but coffee is about coffee culture. We mean it in the bigger sense. I think that's what we were trying to express with all the voices that you'll see in part of this exhibit. So just the idea that you're sitting, wandering around the space, people will be talking at you from urban farmers in the Bronx to giant soybean farmers in the middle of the country. You'll learn about the relationship between aquaculture and agriculture. You'll learn about the role that nutrition plays in bettering lives of people in developing countries. You'll learn all sorts of things. Then in the center of the room, these people are standing around a game. And a game is everyone's favorite thing to game things up. But what the game is really putting all of these pieces together, that actually, if you do change how much money you invest in research, there is an impact on perhaps what you can produce from your fields and your yields. Or if you create an environment that leads to innovation and entrepreneurship through policy, you can actually solve some solutions or have an impact on solutions that might be different. And so my favorite thing that Molly once said when trying to explain how does this all work in a game is people stand around and they bat things back and forth, and people like to do that. People like to throw things around. And I think that's really true, first off, but also it's really, I think sometimes we make food too complicated and there are so many details that it's almost overwhelming to think about the problems of feeding the future. And in fact, if you just think about these things as little things we bat around that we all have to together get somewhere, I think it's a very profound moment in that realization, that mindfulness.